Good morning. On behalf of the Alliance of Women in Workers' Compensation, I want to welcome you to today's webinar. The topic, Career Paths Panel with Industry Executives, will last approximately 1 hour and is a pre-recorded session from the WCI conference in Orlando, Florida on August 14th, 2019. Before we get started, I would like to thank our 2019 corporate sponsors for their support on hosting events such as this. They support us not because they want their logos up on a screen, but they support the cause, which is to affect positive change in the workers' compensation industry through networking, support, mentoring, and collaboration. The Alliance is inclusive of all professionals in workers' compensation, regardless of career stage, with the belief that we can all learn from and support each other. Have you ever asked yourself, what's my career path? Are you thinking of taking the next step in your career? Do you worry that you are not on the right path? A panel of successful women from different aspects of the workers' compensation industry will reflect on their career journeys. Each panelist has a unique story to tell, lessons learned, and successes to reflect upon. Thank you for your time you are spending with us today, and we hope you enjoy this webinar.
And with that, I'd like to introduce Michele Adams from the Employer Advisory. She's with Walt Disney World and will be our moderator today. Michele and your team, the panelists, come on up. We'll get going.
Am I on? Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to make this a comfortable conversation. I have a great panel that's joining me today, and we're going to kick off our discussion on rise and resilience. I'll be honest, when I heard the topic, I was really excited because, I think about the conference that we're at, and I first started attending this conference about 30 years ago, in 1989, when I started out as a claims assistant at a third-party administrator over in Lakeland, and could have never imagined that I would see myself 30 years later on a stage with these women that I have the honor to being with today. So for those of you who are in the audience that are starting your career, just really applaud you and your employer for giving you the time to come and join us today. And I want you to make sure that you see yourself up here as well. You know, the saying is, if I can see myself doing that, then I can believe that I can do it. So every one of you can be on this stage, have an opportunity to talk to these women as well. So joining me today, I have Susan Emerson with Delta Airlines. She's the General Manager of Workers' Compensation, Disability, and Leave Programs. I have Danielle Lisenbey from Broadspire, where she's a Global President of TPA Solutions. Jennifer Ryon, who is with Prime Health Services. She's a Chief Revenue Officer. Claire Muselman is at the far end, and she is with Continental Western Group. She's the Director of Workers' Compensation. And Brittain, Bandura, who is with Zurich, North America. She's the Head of Talent Management of North America. So I'd like for each of them to just give you a little bit of a story about who they are and what they do in their organization, to just give you a little background, and then we'll get into the conversation. And Susan, since you're to my right, do you mind kicking us off?
You just have to pick on me first.
I know.
Sorry, I'm a little froggy this morning. I started this yesterday. I was like, uh-oh. So I am General Manager at Delta Airlines. I have oversight of the day-to-day claim administration and policies and procedures for workers' compensation, disability, and leave. I've been at Delta now in my 14th year, and I was sitting out in that audience many years ago, never realizing I would have a career path that I have now. But one of the things I aspired to do was be on the employer side.
That's great. Thank you. Danielle?
Good morning, everyone. Very excited to be here. I am the Global President of TPA Solutions for Crawford, branded as Broadspire, so around the globe, handle all our TPA solutions. I've been with the organization, I hate to admit it, kind of gives us our age, right? 27 years. Started in the medical management division and have had the honor to work my way up through the organization. Very excited to be here and share our stories with you guys today.
And good morning, everyone. Jennifer Ryon. I'm their Chief Revenue Officer at Prime Health Services, which is a national PPO network. I've been with Prime Health over 13 years and have had the chance to grow up through that organization into a leadership role. I'm over all of revenue, so that's sales, account management, and operations, and looking forward to the discussion this morning.
Good morning, Brittain Bandura. As Michele said, I'm the head of talent management at Zurich, North America, located just outside Chicago. Today is really interesting for me because it's a little bit of two worlds colliding. Earlier in my career, I practiced workers' compensation law for a couple of years, representing petitioners. And as I'm sure we'll get to at some point in the conversation today, have had a long career to get to where I am in human resources, of all things. So I look forward to sharing a little bit about how I got to this place from where I started about 10 years ago, which is how long I've been with the Zurich organization.
Good morning, my name is Claire Muselman, and I started out as a paralegal and then headed over into the TPA world for about 10 years and then decided to transition over into the carrier side and have been trying to make an impact ever since. And I've been with Continental Western now for about 2 years, and if you haven't heard me speak yet, hopefully you'll get to hear me soon when we talk about spreading the message of keeping humanity and compassion in workers' compensation.
Great. So when we think about their theme today, rise and resilience, when I think about my own career, what is that rise moment? What is that moment that kind of things clicked and I realized I was on things, we have our path. We think that things are going a certain direction, but then all of a sudden we're faced with, wow, I never saw myself at this moment. I would love to hear from you all what your rise moment was. And what lesson that might have shaped for you. I know for myself, it was probably in 2009 when I moved into an executive role. And that's when I saw that the game changed somewhat from being an individual contributor, a manager, and then having a very different global aspect of my role. So I'm not going to pick on you, Susan, just because you're on my right. So Danielle, how about you start off and tell us about your rise moment?
Sure. I would say my rise moment was probably 2012. So I was in the med management space on our side of the organization, knew it like the back of my hand, could probably do it in my sleep, very, very comfortable. And I remember saying to my boss one day, he goes, what do you want out of your career? And I looked him in the eye, and he was CEO of Broadspire US, and I said, well, I want your job. Like, all right, good to know. So let's put a plan together. And we did put a plan together, but ironically, it was a 3-year plan. And about 90 days to 120 days later, I get a phone call, and he says, I'm leaving the organization, and I recommended you as CEO of Broadspire US. And I went, okay. So that was just kind of, so it was taking, it was raising your hand, which I always, if you hear me speak, I always tell folks, don't be afraid to raise your hand. Don't be, I hate to say this, a typical female, wait till you're 100% ready for something. You don't have to be 100% ready. You can learn along the way. So take that leap of faith, took that leap of faith, and have been learning along that way. But I would say that rise moment really changed my trajectory. It put me on a global executive board, a management team that was all male, first female to be on that. So break that glass ceiling and really pave the way for others. So I would say that was my moment.
Others? How about you, Jennifer?
Yeah, so the way I got into the industry, I was at a point where I just graduated college and I thought I was going to go into the finance realm, and I absolutely hated it. So I happened to stumble upon, I was actually decided to sell cars for a moment of 3 months because I figured if I could sell a car, I could sell anything. And I actually sold a car to the owner of Prime Health Services, and during the sales process, we kind of talked and went and interviewed. I think the defining moment when I decided that I wanted workers' comp and where I'm at today as my career is a couple years into my position, I was given the opportunity the first couple years to just shadow the president CEO and our EVP and really being mentored through them and actually seeing how to grow a business and what that looks like. And they always said that I was really quiet. I didn't really talk for the first 2 years, and it had nothing to do with me not talking, because you'll find, I mean, if you know me, I like to talk a lot. But it was more, I was just watching. I really shadow. I like to see how people interact, how to really morph into what is needed to be done. And then I was given an opportunity to go into a leadership role at a younger age, and I always wanted to have an impact in something. And so looking at it from that perspective, having a passion, so around 2013 is really where I was like, okay, I'm on this, and I'm gonna put everything towards moving through the ladder of the organization and an impact of what I can do.
Great. Claire?
So I would say mine's probably been pretty recent. Within the past 2 years, like I've always felt that we could just do better in general in the industry. If you don't know me, I tend to be a little bit more glitter and sparkles and out there, and I think that our industry just needs that. So I have been talking about the Apple Think Differently campaign, and I'm one of those crazy people that think that you really can change the world, because it just takes one thought. And so to take that vision and cultivate it, and to hear the feedback that I've gotten from people that are talking about how we really can make a difference in the industry, and you can do things in a working kindly manner and really bring compassion into workers' compensation, has been my aha moment. Because I think everyone really agrees that we can get there, and it's just what do we do not only to elevate the playing field in workers' compensation, but what do we do to drive it forward? So I don't know, it's been having really great leaders that agree with the idea and how you can really push people to get there, but it just takes one crazy idea and someone to say, that's a great idea, you should go for it.
Susan, I think you have an incredible story because of when you moved into your leadership role at Delta. So would you share a little bit? Because I don't know if you see that as your rise moment, but I do.
Well, actually, my rise moment was in 2005 when I left the insurance side of the business and took the plunge to the employer side. And I was there for about 15 months and realized I didn't do my homework very well, because it was a very different world. It was an employer that, while I served as their client service person, that didn't really understand the dynamics of what you don't do right in the industry. And I actually got recruited from there to Delta by a friend of mine who was a broker that we had maintained a relationship with. So my rise moment was coming out of a very comfortable 27, 30-year career at Travelers Insurance, and I'm about to date myself, so I'll stop there, and took that plunge. But I had one other thing that helped me rise and made me have the courage to seek out that was I was asked to take over a group of 20 auto damage appraisers. Oh, what?
God bless you.
Well, they need somebody to help them, and I'm like, I've never appraised the car. So that happened before that, but that gave me the courage and the I'm going to get this done. I don't care who the naysayers are. I mean, that was a female moving into just predominantly, I think I had 2 female auto appraisers, and we grew it to 5 female. But it was really a challenge and we went from number bottom in the region to number 2. So one thing about auto appraisers, you can turn their results around really fast. Mm-hmm. But it gave me the courage to step out of the box and do something different, and not just wait and hopefully it would land in my lap at some point. Delta did sort of land in my lap. The day I was hired, she said, well, we're going into bankruptcy. I'm like, yep, I read the paper. And she said, you may not get a raise for many years after that. I'm like, well, okay, we'll see. So I'm a risk taker, and it's been a really, went through mergers and acquisitions I had never seen before. When you merge and acquire airlines, it is especially when work comp's involved and benefits. So was 2 of my rise occasions in my career path.
And the point in your career and the number of years of experience you had was pretty, significant compared to where many of us find ourselves moving around in our careers. So I admire that so much because, it is hard to reach out of your comfort zone. And I would love, Brittain, your talent management, so you see this a lot. You see women who think they have to have every single qualification on the job description met before they'll even put their toe in the water to consider that they might possibly be considered for the role. But I'd love to hear your rise moment and your thoughts on that as well.
Sure. So for me, it's not as much of a rise moment, but a way of thinking and a way of working, because hopefully there's many rise moments in your career. And if you think about each of those opportunities as really a turning point when you're going from perhaps an older field to a newer field, even changing a position, maybe a promotion, you're given a chance to deliver. That's the point in time where you have to rise each and every time, whether it's a new team, a new supervisor, new stakeholders that you're working with. You're focused on making an impression, doing your best work, becoming an expert in your field and in your role. Each of those opportunities is a way for you to rise and really build that brand for yourself when you're in a new opportunity. And Michele, you're right, it is something that for females does tend to be a little bit trickier, and that is a little bit of a stereotype that we hear. I have found it to be true in my case. I have worked with a lot of females, both from a mentor-mentee perspective and just from a observational standpoint from the role that I do now, which is talent management. And imposter syndrome is real, and it's something that even in the past roles that I've had, where I've come into a role more junior than maybe would have been expected, I know that I've experienced it as well. And it often takes a number of things in order for you to help overcome that. It takes mentoring and perhaps even sponsorship to make sure that you are really being supported and have a place to go to when you need guidance, when you need encouragement or motivation. But another thing that I think females have in spades gets to another of the themes of today, which is resilience, or a word I like even more maybe is grit. And we know that women have so much of this just from overcoming so many different life experiences, their ability to execute and get things done. We rise in so many ways nearly every day. So it's less about a moment for me, but just having those opportunities time and time again to either come into a new situation or really just double down, show that grit and continue to execute so that you can be your best self.
I love that you bring up you mentioned coaches, mentors, and I saw a quote that it's really stuck with me about the differences in between a coach, a mentor, and a sponsor. A coach talks to you, a mentor talks with you, and a sponsor talks about you. And I would love to hear from you all, and you can jump in whatever you want, any role that any part of those coaches, mentors, or sponsors have played in your career path.
I'll jump in to start. I love what was said earlier about he for she. So that's just one aspect of this, the whole idea of gender mix when it comes to mentors and sponsors. So great to see some men here in the audience, and even for those women in the audience, would encourage you to think about what males you're actually mentoring or sponsoring to start influencing and building those skill sets that you can hopefully use to improve those men's leadership skills as well. I've had the opportunity to both be on the sponsor side and then the sponsee side as well. And I can tell you that it's monumentally important for someone's career from both aspects. The thing that it takes, which is different than mentorship, is that fundamental trust that the sponsor has in you. For any of us, we know that in order to put our name on the line for someone, we have to have complete confidence that that person is capable of delivering. And anything less than that is not going to allow yourself to fully endorse someone with your name on the line. And so people will frequently ask me, well, how can I get a sponsor? And I say, well, we'll start today, because it takes time to nurture those relationships, to give someone that confidence and trust that when push comes to shove, they're going to make you proud and they're going to really do well in the role that you've sponsored them for.
That's great.
I think I'd like to start from a different perspective of those sitting in the audience that are like, well, do I have a mentor or how do I get a sponsor? because I think from my perspective, I kind of struggled with, okay, where do you go with that? Because you have to be vulnerable for a moment, right? You have to, from a mentor saying, hey, I need help, or, I think women sometimes hold back because they don't want to feel weak or show weakness. And it has nothing to do with that, right? It has to do with looking at the success that has come before you and that is in the industry, and you look up to those people and you want to find that. So one of my biggest things is, don't hesitate reaching out and having that vulnerable moment to allow individuals to help shape you and shape your career. Because for me, the moment that I had a true sponsor and a true mentor, it woke me up and it made me realize that, wow, I can do this, and I can grow and I can be a leader, and it doesn't matter what age, what gender, where you came from. It puts that into a clear trajectory path for you to go wherever you want. So,
yeah. And I'm going to cue off that from Jennifer, especially if you're early on in your career. Mentors can come in various shapes and sizes. So here's where my coaching or advice would be. Look at it as you building your own personal board of directors. And if you think of a board of director team, they all have different skill sets and different things they bring to the table for that organization. You being the personal organization. It could be a partner in the industry that you're very close to, that you can talk to in confidence of what maybe is going on to your career, all the way up to someone that that is a senior person in the industry that has insights of what's going on in the industry or in the talent world or market world. Someone that we have down here from Zurich. So build that network or build that board of directors, so depending on your situation, like Jennifer indicated, you can reach out to that respective person to help guide you through your journey.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. I have a person that I talk to once a month, and he's a chief technology officer in California. Has absolutely nothing to do with my role. And honestly, I have the most validating conversations with him because it normalizes some of the feelings that I'm having and knowing, wow, he's running a huge business, and we're dealing with the same types of struggles and issues that we're all trying to work out and overcome for ourselves. So I love that concept of the board of directors and diversifying the people that you're talking to, because at the end of the day, they have your back. And your point, Brittain, is spot on about delivering, because this is somebody that you're looking to hopefully recommend you or sponsor you or give you that lift and being able to deliver the goods. So.
I agree with Brittain on making sure that you have male and female. I think you get a good perspective of having both. And I want to piggyback off of Jen's of the vulnerability piece. When you go and talk, you're going to get different perspectives from people on areas that you can improve, and really telling somebody and having that trust and transparency in your communication of, this is where I really want to be, and really shooting above, like, I want your job. Like, that's exactly what I want to get to. So how do we get there? And where do I have little holes in either my career path or where areas that I need to look? Like, if I don't have a good mirror on myself, help me understand what you see or what your perspective is, or what the perception that I give off is, and how do I fix that, or how do I package whatever message or vision I'm trying to get to so that it's consumable for whatever your career path is going to look like. And then I challenge, like, from the coaching side, I have a group of leaders that are below me at work, and I ask them to coach up all the time, because I can always give what I think is good information, or I've got a vision to share, or we're going to move forward this way. And if you get that coaching up feedback as well, they will help. One, it builds a lot more trust with the team because you're being open to feedback and really constructive, I don't want to say it's constructive criticism, but constructive feedback to really help drive you forward. And it also, I think that when you have those good relationships with coaching, it makes you better for the people that are going to come next, because it's not just a one-way street for mentoring, coaching, or sponsoring. It is also about what are you going to do for the people that are going to come, because you're going to be in the same boat at some point. How are you going to elevate and evolve people to move on after you as well?
I want to add to Claire in regards to the being self-aware. I think having a mentor can help you bounce that off, because sometimes we all get in our head, and how we see ourselves in the mirror might not be how others see you, and it allows you to, if you're not confident in yourself and someone reminds you, no, you can do this, you are a leader, it just gives you that, that moment where you're like, okay, get out of your head and you can do whatever you want, right? So you can be in any position, any career path, you just have to put your mind to it. And I think having those good people around you to allow yourself to be self-aware will then continue to catapult you throughout your career path.
And I think to stem off of Michele's point as well, getting somebody that isn't necessarily in your role or your department or your company, or like, I love talking to IT, or actuary is who I like to go to, because we do not see things the same in any capacity. And it's really enlightening to figure out, okay, this is what I'm thinking, and they can ask the why or help me understand, and it helps you develop and evolve yourself for that next step.
I think actuary would be a good mentor.
If I can make the actuaries laugh, I
God,
figure
it's that
it's a good day.
I've had some really good, I guess back in the day we didn't call them mentors, but I've had women in leadership roles as I kind of came up through the ranks who taught me that you had to learn you cannot do everything.
Yeah.
And when you're managing people or you're navigating through that process and you're trying to get results and all that, you have to be able to step back and delegate and trust and have the confidence in your team to do that. And that was a challenge. And to slow down, well, that's still a challenge. But because all of us are like racing down the road, whether you got children, high-profile careers, whatever, it's a challenge. And then balancing that with the people you deal with every single day and you impact their lives. One of the things I learned more about an injured worker than anywhere I've ever been is when I came onto the employer side. And I realized, you realize what you do every day touches an individual's life. And usually what we're dealing with is their livelihood, it is their pay, it is their benefits, it's their treatment, it's how we treat them, it's how we talk to them. And, people generally can understand that. So I was mentored a lot on that because, just because it's your decision and you feel that's the right decision doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best decision for the outcome of the situation. And then I had a lot of good mentors help lead me through the diversity of the workplace. It's not just always about, religion, race, sex. It's about people respecting everybody's opinion. And, the work groups you work with in your internal organization, and I have been mentored, I guess, at Delta with this, I would call that. But we really look and strive to understand what that operation is really dealing with day to day to get that plane off the ground. What is that flight attendant going through every single day to make you all happy when you fly Delta Airlines and make sure you're safe? So when you step back and look at that and, learning this through my career path at Delta, it really puts the human element to it because we're demanding they provide quality, excellent service to get that J.D. Powers Award or whatever award we get. And then conversely, they expect the delivery of their benefits and the way they're to treat you to be impactful through who Delta goes through and the supply and vendor that manages and touches that injured worker, or disabled worker. And so we really, I've really learned a lot through that on the empathy and compassion for the employee because we all get caught up in the red rule, blue rule.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the gray. And, erring on the part of the employee is usually a better outcome than trying to fight it out in a situation that causes your employees to have a bad feeling about your program or something like that. Of course, nobody ever wants to hear, my claim is not going to be approved. So that part of it you probably can't ever make everybody happy when you do that. But it was really a lot of that I've learned from, listening and going to our leaders. And I have had some good success with our male counterparts out in the workplace because I listen and I have to work with them and they put a different perspective on things too and give women an opportunity to succeed. And so I just encourage everybody in here to tap into all your resources, whether it's home or personal life, or Because people can always give you a little nugget of something to take away and learn.
Yeah, I think that what I'm hearing is a lot of diversity and perspective, providing input, whether in whatever shape that might be, the coach, the mentor, the sponsor, and being able to have that diversity is where you're going to have those rich conversations and hopefully get insight that you wouldn't otherwise have. I mean, we all like to think that we're right, but we can't always be right. And so that you know, just being able to tap into that. When I think about, you know, my own career and inflection points that, you know, I can think back that was a significant moment. I would love to hear from you all, you know, your perspective, whether it's about yourself or what you see with the folks that you work with, on patience and waiting for it or action. I have conversations with individuals from time to time, and you know, the question that I'll have is, you know, why haven't I been tapped? Why hasn't this opportunity come to me? And sometimes I'm thinking, well, I didn't even know that you were interested. I didn't know that this was something that you were waiting for. You haven't put yourself out there. So talk to me a little bit about that, you know, having action, being action-oriented and goal setting versus patiently waiting. Danielle, I think you have a really neat story with your background and your upbringing.
You're talking about my military father?
Yes.
Yeah, so when you're raised by a Marine, you're probably not the most patient person in the world, because they are very, very, very action-oriented and very much so you have to constantly go for it, go for it, go for it. So, you know, that's an interesting question, because I think it does, it's got to be kind of a healthy balance, right? So here's my little story I'll tell you. I've been thinking about this when you said you were going to ask this question. So we do succession planning. Every organization does succession planning, right? And so I remember doing succession planning with my team, and I'll leave the names out because there are employees from my organization in here, so they're all going to sit there try to figure out who I'm talking about. So, you know, I really kind of push the guys and girls to think outside the box. And don't assume because someone's not in a perfect alignment that they might not be interested in that role or ready for that role. Okay, so we go through this, and I remember having a very healthy conversation with one of my leaders about his successor and a particular person that was in his group. And he's like, no, she's not ready, she's not interested. I said, have you ever asked the question? Because she, and here's where it comes to your point, is a patiently waiting type personality. She's going to wait to be tapped on the shoulder versus an action-oriented person who's going to raise my hand. I want it. And he's like, she's not interested. I'm telling you. But I will have that conversation to prove my point. And do you know, he had that conversation with her, and she said, I would love to be your successor. I've been patiently waiting for you to tap me on the shoulder of what I need to do next to get that role. So it's interesting because my personality is, hello, what do I have to do to have your job? Where's the plan? Let's go. Let's keep things moving forward, progressing. I want to learn. I constantly want to be involved. And that comes from the Marine.
Yeah.
What's
your next mission?
Yeah, so what's your next mission? What's your next drill? And you're constantly preparing for that next drill, for the next point of action. And so, but you have to have that balance and understand the personalities with the organization of those two things. And as a leader, I think it's very important for us to not just focus on one or the other.
Great. Any other thoughts on patience versus jumping in and with both feet?
I agree with Danielle that there's a healthy balance, and also you have to know when to ask and then when to hold back, or don't think that you have to be 100% ready. I've been reading a lot of books or listening to a lot of books lately, but one of the thought processes is a 40-70. If you're 40% sure that it's going to work, do it. If you get to 70%, you've thought way too much about it. So I'm trying to kind of live my life like that, but also look at when you're a leader in your groups, there's so many different voices, different types of voices. You have your nurturer that is, they have brilliant ideas, but they really don't want to speak up. They're more quiet and reserved in what that looks like. And then you have the creative one that has a think outside the box, these grand schemes of what's coming up. And you then have like the guardian that like shoots everything down. That's the detail, and the pioneer. And I would say, a lot of us up here are pioneers. We know what we want. We're going to get it. We're going to ask for it. But you all have that balance. And so within a leader, within a group, you kind of have to identify who those people are so that you then know how to approach them and how to give them a chance. Because a nurturer, even though they're quiet and reserved, doesn't mean that they can't do it or they don't want to do it. You just have to kind of give them that positive, cheerleading like moment of, yeah, you got this. Like, let's give you an opportunity. I think there's a lot to do with that.
I'll share something from perhaps one of the extremes, something very memorable that actually a great manager and a great leader would say to me and to some of his employees, and he would say just very candidly, I do not wake up thinking about your career. Period.
Great. Yep.
And so it's a little jarring to hear someone say that, but after reflecting on that, you would agree. Why would you wake up worried and thinking about my career and what I'm going to do next? So it's a balance, right? Because we need people like Danielle who are willing to go and have conversations and do the tap on the shoulder. And being someone also who is, by nature, probably more introverted than the hand-raising type, you have to balance that with knowing that no one is going to do this, probably, unless you do. And so if you're waiting for that shoulder tap, you might get lucky, you might, but chances are you're going to have to rise, and raise your hand yourself, because there's likely not that many, so I'll say not no one, but not that many people who are really waking up and ready to think 100% about advocating for you and you alone. And that's your job.
And that's where you've got your board of directors, and you go back to that and making sure that you stack it with people that will be very transparent with you on what you need to do to push yourself forward or to find different areas if you might not have thought. I run hard, fast, and you can burn out pretty easily. So when these guys talk about having that balance, I still struggle with it. And I think that was one of my biggest leadership fails, is that I wanted everyone to run with me. Like, come on, we're gonna go. And teams are like a car. You can't have 15 accelerators and expect to get somewhere without hitting a wall. So, when you look at that from those perspectives and understanding that there's always gonna be that balance that needs to be achieved, or you run hot, fast, and crash pretty hard sometimes.
We had International Women's Day at Walt Disney World this year and had the opportunity to hear from one of our leaders, and she worded it so well. She said, we're not looking for balance, we're looking for harmony. And that has really stuck with me, because I don't think we're ever going to be balanced, right? And to your point, we all want to keep push, but not everybody can run at that same speed. So it is, that's been the thing that kind of sticks in my head, is I'm looking for harmony. Susan, any thoughts on our conversation?
Definitely about the harmony. I have had some, as I explained earlier, some jobs, got tapped on the shoulder. Didn't even feel I was remotely ready for, but the challenge was there. And I did have a multi-line background. Actually worked for Crawford and went through the training program and did truck wrecks and buggy claim injuries at the Winn-Dixie store. So I had a multi-line experience, so that kind of gave me a pathway to take that role. But then I've raised my hand a couple of times, and when I've raised my hand, I'm like, why did I do that? Because it's more of a challenge than you anticipate. You could take over a team that's struggling, and then how do you get them to be successful and help them? And so I was doing this at Delta, and we merged with Northwest Airlines, and oh my goodness, it was a brutal, any merger and acquisition, but something like that, trying to pull two airlines together, and one's union and one's not. So I was working extraneous hours. I couldn't even remember what hotel room I was in, excuse me, from time to time, because I was traveling so much. And so I got back to the office one day, and my direct report manager said, can you please stop sending me emails at 2 o'clock in the morning because I wake up thinking, oh my God, and I'm like, oh, wow. That was some compelling feedback from your employee. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I wouldn't expect you to do anything about that. I just maybe woke up and jotted something down. I thought I needed to send it just so I wouldn't forget to do something. But taking that kind of feedback from my direct reports, slow down, calm down, and I do have people around me that are much calmer than I am, even though I've tried to, keep it even keel and harmony. I really support the work-life balance. I know that's an overused term, but I really try to employ that with my team, and we're in a capacity we can do that. Because if you're working till 7 and 8 o'clock one night, or 8 to 7 or 9, and you got family, you got to go home. You got to decompress. You got to have that time. And I think a lot of us struggle with that because we're charging hard, and we want to get there, and we want to do the right thing, and we don't step back and think about the people that are behind us that you can leave in the wake if you don't pay attention to what they're saying. And I'm still not there. I don't know that I'll ever be there in my career. It's the very hardest thing I am to do is just to step back for a minute. And sometimes I don't always make really great decisions because I don't slow down enough to think it through, so I have to go, oops, and dial it back. But that's a lot of feedback I've received down through my career path, and it's helped, but I don't know that it's ever going to, stop me from doing that, reacting that quick.
Your DNA is your DNA. But
It is, yeah.
I think you make a great point, though. Some of the best insight that we can receive is probably from our teams that report to us. I mean, we talked about mentors and sponsors, but what about the teams that we lead and how that might shape our leadership style? I hope, I think that my leadership style has changed over the years, and part of that is absolutely been influenced by the diversity and the different teams that I have been a part of. And so I'd love to hear from you all if any thoughts on that.
Listening, number one. I continue to work on it on a regular basis. I also think that I really encourage coaching up, and we do, people call them skip level meetings or whatnot, but I meet with every single person that's in our group at least once a quarter, and I always ask, what can I be doing better to support you? Because you're gonna get answers, if you just stop and listen, you're gonna get answers from the people that, might be waiting for the tap or not, or really getting some clear feedback on what it looks like, what shape your organization is going to take, and where you find your gaps in your leadership. And so the ego is a very tricky thing. So you can also hear from when you see these people that are like, this is what I want this, and giving them feedback and how you can better support them to elevate them to get them to the next level as well. So you are doing your succession planning, you're finding other mentors. That mentors don't have to be in positions that are higher than yours. They can be any type of level, and the same with your sponsors. I think some of the greatest people that can advocate for you are your team members. Like, I love when my leader goes down and talks to the people that are in my group but not necessarily directly reporting to me, because you're going to get different types of perspective, and you get exactly what your perception is to other people. Even though you might think it's one way, it might look like something completely different.
Yeah, I think as a leader, the best thing that ever personally happened to me is to have global responsibility. And here's why I say that, is I think you have to evolve as a leader. And sometimes when you have a certain team that you've been with for a long time, you kind of set in your ways, right? So taking on global responsibilities, I've had to learn the hard way how I talk to a Brit in order to get something accomplished versus how I talk to an Australian to get something accomplished, or a Canadian, or a European, or someone back in the States, is night and day. And so I think that has really helped me from that learning the different cultures and getting the feedback from those different individuals has really helped push me as a leader out of probably my comfort zone of being U.S. focused for 25 out of my 27-year career, and to think a certain way. So I think that feedback has been phenomenal.
That's such a great point. I heard a woman who was speaking on different cultures, and she said some of the worst misinterpretations are from people who speak English because of the context within which you're speaking. So U.S. to, say, somebody who might be London-based, You think that because you speak the same language that you understand each other, but you can have completely missed meaning.
Especially one word
yeah.
can do it. I can tell you, I kept saying open rec. So for those you in the US, you think open requisition, right?
Yeah, open position.
Rec. That does not, I'm not sure what rec means. They have not shared that with me, so I gotta believe it probably means something really awful, because I was supposed to say open position. But I should have known by the glass look I got for days when I kept saying, what about that open rec? What about that open rec? And they're going, what?
And they don't post online, they post to mail.
Exactly. So yeah, you learn a little bit of the hard way with some of those words.
Yeah.
I would love to just reinforce that some of the best things that you can do for your organization is create diverse, inclusive teams.
Absolutely.
So D&I is the other hat that I wear in my role, and one of the things that we've been really trying to do to reinforce and build belief around this is doing inclusive leadership and management trainings. And it is so meaningful to take a group of individuals who do not think about things like D&I in their day job every day. By the end of 90 minutes, they come out thinking, wow, I value my team and their perspective in such different ways. And just to get them thinking more about their team from a compassionate, empathetic standpoint is just, it's so meaningful. So we do things like, there's a great video, I would suggest writing it down. It's called Inclusion Starts with I. It's either, I see some heads nodding, it's either Accenture or EY. Anyone know? No, okay. But Inclusion Starts with I. It is a phenomenal video that encourages people to think about not just fitting into a demographic box, if you will, but thinking about all of the things that make people unique, from their caregiving status to having a member of their family that is handicapped, to having a name which is difficult to pronounce and thus the person feels looked over. Just all of these different aspects of what make people feel either unique or shut out, and then looking at how we can drive more inclusive behavior, like the taps on the shoulder, like asking them to lead a meeting when they wouldn't otherwise raise their hand to do that. The other challenge that we give to leaders is around looking very thoughtfully about who they keep in their inner circle. And so knowing that many of the chances to network and build relationships can oftentimes stem from casual encounters, either the infamous water cooler chatting on a Monday morning about the game or golfing that weekend or what have you. Those are casual conversations that many times, not always, but many times women get left out of simply because they may not have the facts or the frame of reference, or it just might, excuse me, be easier for me to just grab the guy I golfed with and head to lunch, not thinking that the female on the team would also like to go to lunch with me as well. And really just challenging those everyday behaviors that can actually be excluding some people on the teams, and challenging them to hold up that mirror and look at potential ways that they could be acting more inclusively, knowing that when people can bring their whole self to work, that's when they deliver the most. That's when they're going to be the most innovative. They're going to be the most collaborative if they feel like they're part of a team and like the leader is truly including them and has their back.
We, at Disney, we use the phrase belonging. We want to create a sense of belonging. Pixar developed a short film this year. It's called Pearl, P-E-R-L, and it's just fantastic. Yep. I'd highly recommend you Google that one while you're Googling the other one. I think, I'm not going to ask for a raise of hands, but I would bet that most of us on this panel have probably been passed over for a promotion or an opportunity at some point in our career, and probably left us feeling a little bit defeated and self-reflective and wondering what happened. And since we are talking about rise and resiliency, and the word you used earlier, I love, grit, I would love to hear from you all your thoughts on resiliency, and what does that look like to you, and what lessons have you learned from that, or would you love to be able to go back and tell that person who may have felt a little defeated back then when they may have been passed over for that opportunity that they felt they were ready for, what would you tell yourself? So anyone can jump in.
I definitely been there. It's super fun. But this is, again, so I would always be the first person. I told you guys I run hot. And so I'm always like, I want that opportunity. And checking the ego at the door. Because again, you think you know everything. I'm a millennial, so I can definitely say we have I'm very fascinated by generations in the workplace. I have a very diverse team, and we function very much as a family. So I like to go back to people and say, help me understand. So not only the people who might have been hiring for that career spot, but also the people on my team where, okay, one, help me understand what I could be doing better, help me understand what this looks like, or what skills am I lacking, or what could have been done better. And it's something else that I think that we do as women a lot is we compare. Comparison is great, but really it's all about you and how you're going to develop yourself, because the only person that you're competing with is yourself. So what are you doing to build that? And I love the question, help me understand, and I think it goes above and below for wherever you're at, or even from different partnerships throughout the departments that you work with, whether it be IT or actuary or underwriting or things like that, of help me understand how I could be better suited for that the next time around. Or have you thought about a different opportunity where you might not have been ready for it, but you've got that 40% that this would have been better suited for you at that time?
That's great.
Yeah, I actually was passed over for the same job twice. So if that gives you any gut-wrenching, and I remember the first time it was in '98, and it was to run our medical bill review division, and there was 3 of us up for the role, and even though I was the person running the operations, they chose someone that was more project manager, IT oriented, because we were doing a system change. I'll be honest, went home and boohoo and cried like a little baby because I just didn't understand. Remember, Marine was in the house. So got the buck up, you need to not show your weakness. That's kind of good and bad, right? I think you have to have your moment. But, he truly believed that hard work and perseverance paid off. Hard work and perseverance, so don't you dare give up. Figure out what, kind of the whys, right? And move forward. And guess what? A year later, it happened again. And, the person's friend was kind of chosen. But I had that in my head. My time will come. I'm going to continue being true to who I am, true to what I believe in, learn from it, learn different lessons, and my time will come. And sometimes it is a matter of timing. But the biggest piece I learned, and it's going to circle back to what we were talking to at the beginning of the conversation, I never had a sponsor at the table, both times. I never had a sponsor at the table when I reflect back, both times. So it's very important to build that board of directors, build that board of directors.
So nobody was advocating for you. And
Nope.
Yeah,
So I had to do that kind of that soul searching. That part of it was me. I had to do a better job of networking. I had to do a better job of really demonstrating and getting people to know who I was and what I was capable of for us versus listening to the Marine and just working hard.
I like that. I think that when you think about the board of directors again and who's there, life isn't fair. And so if you don't know how to play the political games and having somebody at the table, I think that's one of the greatest lessons that I've also learned is who's there advocating for you. And do you have the right people? So we talk about like the water cooler talk, or who are you assimilating yourself with? That's important when you've got those people that are sitting at the table talking for you, because do they have the right reputation to have the respect to get you into that career role, or are they just noise?
I think you said it well. Are they going to put their reputation on the line for you? You have to have that kind of relationship.
Jennifer, you look like you're wanting to say.
Oh, no. No, I think, so my career I would say has been on a fast track. I know I've been in the industry a little under 15 years, and because I was given an opportunity, I came into Prime Health that was smaller 13 years ago, and we've grown exponentially and added new departments and new roles. And what I have seen from that side is because I was given the chance to move up, as we've added new positions and I've interviewed the individuals, the candidates, and those that didn't get that position. One of my biggest things is, at least you went for it, right? Don't be afraid, take that risk, and then go back and self-reflect and look and see, okay, how do I become more of an expert of that piece? If that is your goal, if that's the position that you want or that career path that you want, how do you become invaluable, right? How do you make sure that you are seen or you look like that team member that does want to excel? But I always say take that risk and always look for opportunities, because there's opportunities every day. You're giving opportunities in your career, you're giving opportunities in your personal life. It's just whether or not you identify that it is an opportunity and you grab it and you take it. If not, it will pass you by. And I think someone said that, no one's waking up saying, hey, I want to help everyone that's around me. But you do have to say, okay, I'm in charge of my life. And I have to decide. So I have to wake up every day and want it, because if you don't want it, you're not going to get it. You might be tapped, or you might be seen in a different light, or you might have that opportunity. But I think you have to want it, and you have to have that passion. And then if you don't get it, have grace for yourself. That is my biggest word for myself, because we're so hard. Well, I'm really hard on myself, and I think that's one thing, that if you don't get it, or you fail, or you go down a path where you wake up and you're like, where am I? What am I doing? Why am I here? You don't understand why you're somewhere. I always say that I learn the most when I look and say, I don't know why I'm here. And then a couple months later or a year later, I'm like, okay, that's why I was there, because I learned something, I grew from it, and I can take something from experience and move on. So I always say just the risk taking and keep on going.
Yeah, I always call those rear view mirror moments, where I can't figure it out today, but I know one day that'll be in my rear view mirror and I'll know why this happened when it did. It prepared me for something else. That's great.
I just wanted to quickly build. I think it was Danielle talking about not having someone in the room during those couple of selection decisions, and to get tactical for a minute in the ways that you can have someone in the room. So many of us can work in silos oftentimes and not have line of sight or opportunities really to work with others in other parts of the organization on those types of high profile or cross-functional projects that sometimes do garner more visibility and opportunities. How do you combat that in order to be known by more people, to establish more of a brand for yourself, so that no matter what the room is, you've got a network of people who know you, know your ability, know your desires or your aspiration, and can then speak on your behalf? So how do you do that if you're not being selected or in a role that allows you that opportunity? And some of the things you can do are join employee resource groups, for one. Very hard to take time away from the desk. I think that's an issue that we all have and struggle with. It is an investment in time, it's an investment in yourself that you absolutely must make, whether it's an hour or two a month to meet other people in the organization, to do Toastmasters, to do wellness groups, even if you're meeting people at the gym in your organization. It is so important just to get to know other people. And yes, you're building your network while you're doing it, but for those of us who've been with our organizations for 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, the amount of people that you will have the opportunity to work with, or can help you, or you can help them in some way, those are relationships that will bear fruit later on. So don't miss those chances to invest in yourself by taking the time to expand your network in ways that will just grow your line of sight to everything else that's happening in your company.
Right. And you're spot on. We had interns this summer across the globe, and we had a group of them in Atlanta that did presentations. And one of the presentations that came out of this intern group, so early career, entering the market, is they really want to push us as an organization to allow a minimum of 10%, and they labeled it, they had a fancy word, but professional development. And not in the traditional sense of you're thinking of. It's really more getting involved to gain them exposure of either learning something or highlighting who they are and what they're capable of. So here's the 18 to 22-year-olds saying, you as an organization need to do a better job of allowing that door to be open in order to do that.
My favorite thing to suggest to people is because people generally like to talk about themselves and people generally like to have coffee, I would encourage anybody to reach out to someone who you have, who has the job you want, who's in a field that you have interest in but maybe don't know a lot about. Maybe they went to the same school as you or the same prior employer, and you think there could be something there to grow a relationship out of. Send them an email, have a coffee, have a virtual cup of coffee over Skype or what have you, and take that first step. It is very, very rare that anyone will turn down a half-hour coffee. So there's a tip.
I would encourage senior leaders that are in the room, it's called 52 cups of coffee once a week, to do the reverse and reach out to someone and have that cup of coffee with them and give them an opportunity to talk about themselves and become that mentor or coach for them, even if it's just point in time moment.
Yeah.
I love that. So we're getting close to the close of our panel, and I would love, just in closing, if each of you could just maybe take a minute and what word of advice, that 52
Here's mine, I
cups,
did
there's
mine.
yours. Susan, do you mind starting? As you think about people who are on wherever they are in their career path and our topic, rise and resilience, what advice would you give today?
Well, I would say it's not always about title and money either.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's where you are in your career, what your desire to be. If I had got hung up on the title and the career path within Delta, I could probably be very disappointed. But when I say comfortable, I am challenged in this role every day, and it's meeting my needs. So for me to try and reach out to be a pinnacle of a VP at Delta would be pretty lofty in my career at this time. So sometimes you have to step back and self-reflect if that's what you really want. And one of the things I was also taught coming and working for Delta, my first boss, she was a nurse. Ahmed did field case management, and I came to work for her, and she was brilliant. She also was one of my encouragers of life. You can do it. When she gave me disability, I was like, well, I don't know disability. Oh, you can do it. You can take it. You can do it. And I did. And but when I got a promotion for taking that and doing it, there was some criticism from colleagues. So understand, if you have criticism from your colleagues, I was so taken aback. But the one thing she taught me that I had never really set back, because I can remember kind of when you see somebody get promoted, not maybe you wanted the job, having that feeling, why do they keep getting that? She taught me it is not my job or not my role and responsibility to question why someone else got a promotion, that I may not necessarily know their level of performance or how they were working with their leader or their sponsor or who felt they were the best, position for that. So I get some of that from my team sometimes when they go, some of the same people always get it. I'm like, well, we don't know everything about that. We don't know. And so it's not for me to question or challenge why someone gets a promotion. It's for me to learn how to work with that and work with that person and help them be successful and not strong arm because you don't think whether I wanted the job or not doesn't mean that I should be judging that they're not the right candidate for that role when somebody else made that decision. So that was one of the defining things when someone was criticizing my promotion, that she taught me to be humble about that and felt the person was just really ugly about it. And it was an eye-opening moment for me, even as long as I've been in the career. Because people can be, you have to rise above that and not, get caught up in their drama. And so I didn't, and that's a strong word. And I continued to work with the person very well. So you have to just kind of be humble with it and move on.
That's great.
But I worked harder. I was going to prove I could do that job.
Yep, my encouragement, any leader in the room, 52 cups of coffee to give back in and outside your organization.
Great. Jennifer.
I think from those that are early in their career, just continue to learn and soak it in and be okay with where you're at within your career. If you want to be a CEO, you want to be an owner, wherever you want to be, where you feel like you'll be happy is be okay with where you are today. Just kind of take a breath and see where you're at, and then kind of self-reflect and be self-aware and know that I always instill on my team, I say, if you're not learning every day, you kind of have to, let's reevaluate what we're doing here, because I think you can grow from a lot of different angles. And be okay with your personal life. If you're struggling in your personal life, it's okay to have grace for yourself in the workplace and vice versa. And just have passion for what you want to do. I think, it's miserable not to like what you do. And if you want to be a leader, I think you have to have that passion, because people will see through you, right? You can't be that leader if you really don't believe in what your message is. So just be true to yourself throughout your whole career, and you'll get to where you want to go.
Thank you. Brittain?
So just from a straight talent management perspective, I would say we didn't talk a lot about goal setting today, or how to define your goals. So do the work of figuring out whatever that goal is. But then my thought would be socialize that and share it. A goal is really not doing you a lot of good if it's on a piece of paper and it's tucked away in a closet or in a folder, and no one ever hears about it. From a talent management perspective, I want to and need to know what it is that you want to do, so I can help you get there. I can be on the lookout for opportunities that are consistent with what you want to do, or maybe an interim step as to what you want to do. So take every opportunity to, when you're meeting, all of these coffees and meetings that you'll be going back to do, be prepared to talk about what it is that you want from your career, where you want to go, even if it's not a role, just in general, the things that you're looking to do in the next 3 to 5 and on years. That way, there's a greater likelihood that someone will be able to help you get there.
Great. Thank you. Close this out. Claire?
Yes, I've got 2 things. One, enjoy the moment. I think we're setting goals and we're pushing forward, and you forget to just take solace in that moment of your time, like right here, right now, because at one time that's where you wanted to get to, or those are the little tiny moments. And get okay with failure, as much as that's an interesting concept. One of my mentors at work right now told me, you're gonna fail over and over and over again, and you've gotta get comfortable with that space afterwards, because it's not only an area of opportunity for growth, but as long as you're failing forward, you're still going in the right direction.
That's great.
Well said.
Well,
Michele, what about you? What is your advice?
Oh, you said something that was really funny that I've thought about. I remember, it's a quote, and I know I'm going to get it wrong, but it was something to the effect of, I remember how I was so excited to be in the position one day that I am now in today. And I definitely reflect on that, because I remember somebody telling me when I was at Disney, I could see you as being a vice president here one day, and I was like, you have been drinking something. But then knowing that somebody had that thought, it allowed me to think about myself that way. And so that's something that I strive for, and I hope that you all would too, is if you have direct reports, instill in them that possibility of where they could be, so that they will give themselves permission to imagine themselves there, particularly women. When we lift up women, we all rise. So I just want to thank this panel. You've been fantastic. I have gotten so much out of our conversation today, and I'm looking forward to our next speaker and our networking. And Kimberly, if you want to take the transition.
Yeah, we actually have, is this on? We actually have time for a couple questions.
Oh, great.
I know it's kind of impromptu. Yeah. Artemis has a microphone, as do I. Is there? Okay, here we go. We'll start with you. Thank you.
So the remote worker is here, and as I listen to you guys, career development is all about developing your social network and your sponsors and your advocates. So this is my inference, and sometimes I take my inferences too far, so if I'm wrong, I'm good with that. But are you saying if you want your career to go ahead, avoid a remote position?
No,
Not at all.
No.
I mean, I think we all shared, I know I did, that the person that I work with that's a sponsor, he's in California. I've only seen him once in the last year.
I think we're so technology driven that even if you're remote, you can still feel connected. right? And if you don't, then look to see how you can be connected. How do you make sure that if there are committees, can you remote in? You have the webinars, you have the Skype, you know, just reach out. So I think that don't use that as a barrier. Use it as finding other remote people and then come up with a group and then have the social aspect. And like everyone was saying, you don't have to have the mentor within your organization, within your industry. Just have that good group of solid people that will keep moving you forward and keep challenging you as an individual.
Artemis, do you
say,
have
though,
a question back?
Nope.
Another?
There's one right here,
All right. Oh,
Roller skates,
in the middle.
right in the middle.
Sorry.
Wasn't life-changing.
First of all, I want to thank the panel. You fueled so many thoughts. My brain, my neurons are firing like crazy. So thank you. But I wanted to share with everyone else. The topic of grit came up. There is a book by Angela Lee Duckworth called Grit. And there is also an online assessment. And I encourage everyone to take a look at that.
Excellent.
That's great. Okay, so I think that makes for a great transition because it's the energy you feel right now that we want you to take into the next portion of our event, which is the collaboration session. So pick a facilitator. Every table should have a facilitator, and we want you to stay at the tables for this next period of time so that you can collaborate on either your own topics or topics that we've given to you on page 16. So if you're taking a break, be quick, come back, and please help me thank our panelists.